Rock and Roll says baby boomers are going to cry harder. No one's coming, especially Gen Z, to give them millions for the huge homes, which 70% of them living spaces are not even useful, completely devastated. That's what we're moving into. That's what I'm saying. Do not buy anything right now. Houses, cars, there's just no point. Everything's so inflated. And it's not worth the price that people are paying for it. As Rock and Roll said, they're looking for millions of dollars the only thing that's increased in those homes is the dollar's gotten shittier. That's it. They've hardly done any renovations to them. The land around it, the neighborhoods haven't gotten any better. There's no reason for it to go from a $200,000 house to $1 million house, other than the fact that they've just printed so much fiat. And when people stop valuing fiat like they do today, the prices and the values of those houses are going to go down in fiat and in Bitcoin, but especially in Bitcoin. Because as this whole thing happens, people are going to be looking for a safe place to hold their wealth. As the dollar continues to deteriorate, people are going to be looking for a safe place to keep their capital, and that's going to go into Bitcoin. Save Seattle says boomers are taking advantage of people. Bad karma. I mean, we can't really label boomers altogether. There's a whole bunch of different people within the boomer demographic. There's different types. There's people who have milked the system. There's people who have taken advantage of the system. There are people who are trying to, continue to rip off the system. But there's also people who realize that, the reason why we let it get this far is because they were completely oblivious to what was happening. And it wasn't necessarily their fault. That's what we have to keep in mind here. I know everybody likes to give boomers a hard time. And boomers would be like what? People who are 50, 60, 70 years old, probably 60, 70. But people love to give them a hard time. But we have to keep in mind here that we have a much different life than they had back then. They didn't have the internet. And the internet has created two different things for people here. They were forced to go to a job because there wasn't the opportunities that we have right now. They were forced to go to a job, stay with the same company. They were promised a better life once they retire. And I know that there's a lot of boomers out there right now who are really having a hard time because, 5 years ago, they were in a perfect spot. They were going to retire. They had this huge nest egg that they've been building up over the years. And they've just seen that deteriorate in value, in purchasing power over these last 5 years. And so they're either going back to work or they're scrambling to, that I actually feel bad for them. And like I said, like people like giving them a hard time, but so they didn't have the opportunities in terms of working from home, building their own business, promoting their own brand. They didn't have that opportunity. But the other side of it too is that they didn't have the information that we have. They had 3 sources of information, maybe 4. The TV, the newspaper, and the radio. Did I miss any there? That's pretty much it. They had the TV, the newspaper, and the radio. That's where they got all of their information from. There was no websites. There was no Nostr. There was no YouTube where people could actually share their opinion and talk about the reality and logical things happening in the world. They didn't have that. They had 3 sources of information. And they could go to the coffee shop and talk about what's been going on. But, I mean, they didn't know. Everybody got their information from the same places. And those sources were all lying to them. They were carrying out this illusion that the fiat dollar was worth something and that they should be working their whole life to accrue more of that, when the whole thing was a complete lie. But they did not have access to the information that we have now. They didn't have the internet. So I do not fault boomers at all for where we ended up here. I do fault the boomers who now have access to that information and who are continuing to ignore it and hope that their retirement's going to be enough without really doing anything to fix the problem that they created here. But there are many boomers who are, and I hate saying the word boomers, it just sounds so derogatory, but there are that generation, what even is the generation? Baby boomers, I guess. We'll say baby boomers. That sounds a lot more nice. Baby boomers. There's a lot of baby boomers now who are taking action to try to correct some of this. There's people who are watching the show right now who are taking action to try to correct this and build a better life for their kids who are probably living in their fucking basements right now because of this mess that we've created. But I'd have a lot of respect for people who are, you know, who've come to the realization that they've been lied to their whole life, because that's a hard thing, even for, you know, somebody who's my age. I don't even know what generation I am. Not Z. What am I? Millennial. For millennials, like we had a much different path here, and the people who, I think that the millennials are actually going to be the generation that changes things around, not because we're better people, but because of the timing of everything that's happening here and the information that we do have. But yeah, that's my spin on that. They were told lies and they didn't have any alternatives. Exactly. They didn't know that they were being lied to. So I don't fault them at all. I really don't. And so the people now are paying for it. But Lost Boomers were born in 1964. Yeah, that sounds about right. Cold Deck says 46 to 64. Boomers are the most brainwashed and manipulated.